In this video, I'm going to guide you guys through the process of compilation for Analysis Situs project. So this is our flagship project. For those of you who do not know, it's like inspection utility that has rich functionality for feature recognition, and we position it as the only open sourced CAD feature recognition framework out there. And besides like open feature recognition, what we are also doing, we are developing our commercial plugins for sheet metal, CNC recognition, and also working with DXF files and more actually, because we also have nesting and some other interesting stuff. For today, let's see how to build Analysis Situs from scratch. So normally you navigate over to the website of Analysis Situs, which is analysissitus.org. From there you go to Features Open Source, and here, well, you have a couple of options. You can build Analysis Situs on Windows, or you can build it on Linux if you will. I would prefer building it on Windows, because Windows is the main operating system for our team, like for the development and also for the use. And also on the forum, there is a little bit of statistics. If I go to the Analysis Situs resource, which is where the application is hosted, you see that this is how many downloads we have for the Windows distribution, and like for Linux, it's not that impressive, I'd say. We publish this little app image for Linux runs, and it's just 100 downloads, so it's nothing. That's why I suppose most people who are using Analysis Situs, they do it on Windows. And let's navigate over to this build instruction, and normally here you're supposed to read this forum topic to understand how you basically build the whole thing. For that you will need two things. You will need a libpack that contains all the third-party dependencies of Analysis Situs, including OpenCascade, VTK, Qt, and other libraries. Other than that, of course, you will need to have the sources of Analysis Situs. So to access sources, you can go to the Get Started page, and from here you will see the link to GitLab, which is our Git repository, and from here you can grab the sources. So basically you can just go and clone this repository, like with HTTPS, why not? And in the console you just go like git clone. And this is what you do. So now in the working directory, what I have is first of all the sources of Analysis Situs, and then I have this libpack for all the third-party dependencies, well, prepared for Windows for a specific version of Visual Studio, which is in my case 2019, but I'm pretty sure that the same thing will work quite well for any other version of Visual Studio, as long as it is supporting C++ standard 17. Now I'm going to configure the project, and for that I use CMake. So here we have to specify the source folder with our working directory, with the Git repository of Analysis Situs, and then where we are going to build the binaries. So normally I just add a subdirectory named build. And click configure. It says, okay, should I create a build directory? Yes. Then Visual Studio 2019. Normally here you are also supposed to specify the bitness of the platform. If you do not specify anything, then x64 will be used by default, and you can just leave it like this. Now it says that there are some errors in the configuration process, and that's because I need to specify the folder with the third-party dependencies. Here it's going to be the directory with the libpack, this unzipped archive. And now what is important, okay, let's start with configure button. Normally the CMake, especially on Windows, should be able to automatically resolve all the third-party dependencies that we have. So you see that basically we have again, OpenCascade, FreeImage, FreeType, TCL, and whatnot initialized. So all these directories are automatically located. And now what we can also do, normally what I do myself is I take this use Mobius flag, but for that you will also need to compile Mobius, which is our another open source geometric library, so let's leave it off for now. What is more important is to specify the installation folder, so where you will have Analysis Situs installed. Install. And then the distribution type. This is the use case dependent. If you are going to use Analysis Situs as a software, like a normal user with all these interactive controls and 3D scene, then choose complete distribution type. If rather you are going to use Analysis Situs as an SDK, as a software development kit, pretty much like OpenCascade plus some features to work with feature recognition, to work with assemblies, and everything else we ship with Analysis Situs, then your option is Algo. Algo is much faster to compile. It doesn't contain any front end. It doesn't contain any 3D visualization or windowing system. So basically, this is your choice when you develop your own software. But let's start with complete. And now what happened is that CMake prepared for generation of Visual Studio Solution file. So now I click this generate button and it will generate this Visual Studio Solution and project files for the current generator of Visual Studio 2019, apparently. And by clicking this Open Project button, I am taken to the IDE. There we go. So now we are in the IDE, in the Visual Studio, with Analysis Situs solution all prepared. Here we have three configurations. Debug is what it says to be. It's when you want to step into and over pieces of code in Analysis Situs. The target production ready configuration is release. Then you might also want to have release with debug and for. This is especially useful when we are profiling the performance of the application. Like we want to have all basic optimizations by the compiler and linker, but we also want to keep PDB files like all the symbols so that we can navigate over the stack traces and see the places in the code where the hotspots are located. So these are the three configurations. So let's probably start with debug. And here normally if you configure it all properly, you do not need much. You just go to this install project in the Solution Explorer and in the context menu click rebuild or build, and here in the output, well, it will take a bit of time to compile everything because Analysis Situs is already a pretty huge software. It's been developed since 2015, so it's already like 10 years old, which is quite a lot of time. And once it is compiled, you choose between several executables to run. So the default executable is ASIX. It's basically the main entry point, the main function in the application. You can also run CLI, which is command line interface, server, which is UDP server, and tests. So basically in 99% of time you will use ASIX. Alright, so now I have compiled and installed Analysis Situs and it's time to run it. So I'm still in the debug mode. I have ASIX as a startup project. So now what I have to do is I just press F5 button on the keyboard and run Analysis Situs right from within Visual Studio, which is pretty convenient. So here is the main window of the application, and you can also see this red icon in the title bar with a little bug over here. It means that you are running the debug mode of Analysis Situs, so that you always know that if your application tends to be a little slow, then you might be working in the debug mode, and just take a look here. So Analysis Situs is up and running. I'm not going to discuss as of now like how exactly to use it, just probably a couple of things. What I can do is I can load a step file in. I can do it either from the UI controls, using the UI controls of Analysis Situs, so I can also do it from the console over here. So I can go like clear and then load part and give the part name. So this will give me the step file loaded in. And after that I can use all the functionalities of Analysis Situs. For example, I can go and recognize holes, So these are all the cylindrical holes in the part. I can also go to recognize isolated features like this little pocket over here. Or maybe I also want to isolate this inner cavity, like here. Set it as a variable, then hide the part, and continue working with this little feature over here. So this is how you normally work with Analysis Situs. You can work either in the interactive application, you can use this ActiveScript window and command line interface of Analysis Situs. And I can also execute this all as a one-liner. So what it does, it loads the step file, like this little part. It recognizes all the holes in the part, and then it prints the indices of those holes. I can also like recognize blends, all the fillets in the part. And also print their indices over here. So these are the indices of my blend chains. So the ActiveScript window is a little bit specific. It resembles mostly the active sheet concept from software like Maple. It means that the software doesn't prompt you to enter just one command at a time, and you can come back to previously entered commands whenever you like. Just put a cursor at the corresponding line and press enter on the keyboard, and the corresponding line will be executed once again. This is pretty convenient, and if you want to memorize the contents of your ActiveScript window, of your ActiveScript sheet, you can go like dump all to read. And if you execute this command, then Analysis Situs will automatically put this autoread.log file in the working directory of the application, and next time you run the application, the ActiveScript window will be automatically populated with the contents of this file. This is very handy, and we use it daily. But okay, let's probably just take out these scripts from here, close the application as of now, and run it in the batch mode. To run it in the batch mode, what I have to do is I have to specify the argument. In the Visual Studio IDE, what I can do is I can go to the debugging properties, and in the command arguments, specify all the arguments what I want to pass over to the application when it runs. Here in Analysis Situs, what I can do is I can go like run script or run command. You use run script whenever you want to execute one another TCL commands, and you use the run command if you already have some like instructions to run. So here I can just specify all this, just what I did in the application interactively. Just make sure that I have the same configuration like that I'm going to run, because for release configuration the settings are specified independently. And now I can run it again. What will happen now is that because Analysis Situs is asked to do some job in the batch mode, it will not prepare any UI windows, it will not initialize any 3D scenes, it will just do the job and silently exit. So here what we see is the execution log. What it says is that the batch mode is now activated. There are two arguments for the runtime. One is the executable itself, and then the second argument is what to do, is this like run command and the set of commands what I want to execute. After that, Analysis Situs also prints the path, like if something doesn't work, when you might want to check this path and other environment variables. What it says next is that we are running in the batch mode. Then it loads everything what it assumes to be a plugin. And after that, alrighty, so the job really begins. So what we do is we read something from the step file, then we recognize drilled holes for this amount of time, then we recognize blends, and this is the result of hole recognition, all the face IDs, and this is the result of blend recognition. So you may want to do something with those indices. For example, you can go and defeature those features if you will, or you can use them, to further analyze machining properties or probably manufacturability properties of those features. Now let me show you something else. Analysis Situs is a cross-platform product, so it runs equally well on Windows and Linux. And also one of our community members contributed quite a valuable Docker file that allows us to build Analysis Situs on Docker as well. So to work with Docker environment, I personally prefer using Visual Code. It's quite extensive, pretty much like another incarnation of old famous Emacs. So here you have to have installed the Docker extension. I don't actually remember what was the original name. I think it's, container tools maybe. And here you have this icon once it is installed. You can see all the containers that are up and running, and well, this one I should probably stop. So you can manage the whole bunch of containers that you have right from Visual Studio Code, although of course, in order for this to be functional, you need to install Docker on your Windows machine, because I am on Windows machine as of now. Let me first navigate over to the working directory of Analysis Situs. So what I'm doing is I'm just selecting this folder with my working copy of the Git repository, and in the Explorer, I trust the authors, and in the Explorer I have the whole bunch of files, everything related to Analysis Situs, and what I am particularly interested in right now is this Docker file. So you see, this is a Docker file that allows me to build Analysis Situs. It inherits from the base image, which is, well, not like the super fresh version of Ubuntu, but who cares? And what it does then, it prepares everything, like it installs the development tools, including some Qt tools and Git and whatnot, method driver, and then it uses, it clones our fork of VTK, it takes out the version of OpenCascade what we use. Well, basically here it still uses the official version of OpenCascade, although we just recently forked OpenCascade to give it some essential patches, and we are going to live on our own fork of OpenCascade instead of the official version. But it should still work, and moreover, as of now, as of beginning of September 2025, I think our versions of OpenCascade are just binary compatible to each other. So when we install some third parties like FreeType, when we copy the sources of Analysis Situs to the Docker environment, and after that we configure, we pretty much do the same configuration with CMake as we just did in CMake UI, but we do it from the command line. And you see the distribution type here is still complete. So we are going to build the complete version of Analysis Situs, including the UI, 3D visualization and whatnot. And after that, we can run this command. So let's give it a try. I'll open up a new terminal and I will build this Docker image right from Visual Code, which is pretty convenient. So here is my Docker file, and what it also does after it compiles and installs Analysis Situs, it runs the executable like here. And to see what will happen if I run it, I can go to this image and click this Run Interactive option, and it will actually fail because it will try to construct some UI widgets while I am in a headless mode over here. I do not have any X server. And here is a little hint: how would you bind Docker to use an external environment for the display? Assuming that on this machine with this IP address I have like an X server up and running, and this X server can create windows for the application. But let's not do this because it will be a little beyond the scope of this video. Instead, what I did, I just a little bit modified this Docker file, and my modification is as follows. I removed this command to run immediately as the exe.sh, this little bash script to run analysis situs right then the Docker container starts. And instead, I just set up the work dir to where analysis situs is being installed. And now we are going to run it in headless mode to pass some script to execute. Pretty much what we did on the Windows machine natively, we are now going to try in the Docker environment. Few remarks over here about the configuration. So basically, when we compile Open Cascade, one good idea would be also to disable TK. Namely, to put here, when we configure Open Cascade in CMake, this use TK equals off. If you don't do this, when in Docker, when you run the draw console of Open Cascade, it will claim that it's not a TK application and you will not be able to use the interactive prompt of draw test harness. If you disable TK, then draw will not attempt to construct any TK widgets, so it will not send any requests to X server to construct windows, and basically it will work, although without any visualization, but you can still use modeling functions. So just keep in mind this little trick. Other than that, the configuration is pretty much the same. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going just to run this container the same way interactively. And now instead of running as.sh, I'm going to run this little thing. So it's a bash script. What this bash script does, it initializes the virtual X server so that the application, whenever it constructs some UI widgets and windows, it will channel all the requests to something, so it will not fail silently. And this X server, although it would not create any windows for you under the Docker environment, it will allow you just to continue execution and initialize all the widgets internally without showing them on the screen. After that, we configure LD library path to set up our runtime environment, and then we run as.exe. It's the same executable as we ran before, and it only makes sure to pass over the arguments that I want to specify externally, like what I'm passing here. And then here in the command, I just do some synthetic thing. I construct a unit box, set it as an active part, and save it to step file. And this step file will be available in the local file system under the Docker environment. So let's give it a try. I am now connected to my Docker, so I have this prompt from the local file system there, Analysis Situs is installed, and from here I run this bash script, passing the command that I want to execute. So first it initializes the X buffer, and then you see everything happened. It says that the batch mode was activated. Here is the second argument containing the command that I want to execute, then the environment, my LD library path, and then what it does, it constructs the box. It silently sets it as an active part, and then it exports the step file like here. And now I can go to my Docker containers tab, and here under my running container, I should be able to see the result of the execution. Although I can also do it here, I can just go like ls and see my SSTP file over here. So this is one way how you can use Analysis Situs in the batch mode. Essentially you just use the full-fledged application, although as we discussed in the very beginning of this video, you can also use the algo mode of compilation, where you kind of build Analysis Situs as an SDK, as a C++ SDK, pretty much like Open Cascade as such, just a few libraries more to be added to Open Cascade, and with their help you can build your own application and do all these nice things. The batch execution mode of Analysis Situs allows you to build different applications where the CAD processing is performed in a black box, like a separate process. Here's one example. It's our little web viewer for feature recognition and automatic detection of manufacturability issues. It's based on Free.js and JavaScript. So here what I can do is I can load a step file, and on the server remotely what will happen is that Analysis Situs will run in the batch mode. It will perform feature recognition. It will output features in the JSON file, and then you can see over here the GLTF file rendered with the metadata grabbed from this JSON file with all the properties of all the features. So this is one of the very typical use cases we have for this batch execution for Analysis Situs. In this particular case, we are running Windows 2022 server, but you can equally well use any cloud provider like AWS or Azure, whatever you want. So this was a little overview how you use Analysis Situs and what are the typical use cases for it, how you run it as an interactive application, or how you run it as a batch process, either natively or under the Docker container, depending on how you architect your own system. I hope it's useful. Enjoy Analysis Situs. After all, it's open source and you can play around it. You can modify it the way you want. You can fork it, and basically it's completely open to anyone and to any use case. Thank you and take care.